Do you think that archaeology is a science? Well, that is a question almost as old as archaeology itself. Many see archaeology as a science because it often aims to measure and test ideas about how people lived in the past. Others argue that it isn't a science at all, claiming that the science is in the tools that archaeology borrows, things like radiocarbon dating, DNA testing, or LiDAR, while archaeology itself is just the theory bit tacked on afterwards. Now, I know what you're all thinking. Wait a minute, no I don't.
I'm currently stood in my flat, reading excerpts from my favourite philosopher, one R.G. Collingwood, and he has this to say about archaeology. It is unsatisfactory in form, because it never rises above uncertainty. It's unsatisfactory in matter, because it's always concerned with the transitory, the successive, the merely particular, as opposed to the universal. Well, this was written over 100 years ago, and I think it still makes a lot of sense.
Of course, unlike physics, biology, or chemistry, archaeology deals with people, their messy ideas, beliefs, and actions, which aren't measurable natural laws. Because of this, archaeology sits in an awkward position somewhere between science and complete guesswork, and its main goal is often to simply interpret meaning from scientific facts via very unscientific theory, which forms a bulk of the published work out there. There has been quite a lot of heated conversation about this over the last year. You might even call it debate. I especially recall Dr. David Miano talking about this on YouTube, where he strongly argued that archaeology is, indeed, a science. For him, this makes a lot of sense. It's quite hard to place what I mean by this, but there is a sciencey feeling about it, as if there is a real authority coming from the science involved. I don't know, it's like wonder and joy at the miracles of discovery of archaeology, the science found it. The same is true for many news stories on archaeological discoveries, such as this paper I often moan about, where the science of the discovery adds a real certainty and authority to any subsequent theories that come out of it. We aren't always building a house of cards that will blow away, it's more like we're building a very sturdy bridge that might actually be pointing in the completely wrong direction.
Hardly seems worth destroying one of the wonders of the prehistoric world for, but there you go.
Therefore, much of what we claim to know about places like Stonehenge, Machu Picchu, or, I don't know, Jochen Stone Circle, is not actually scientific fact, but rather a chain of interpretations stacked one on top of another, which very often is what science is. Each new theory draws authority from those that came before it. Over time, this creates that bridge, a structure of ideas that appears to have an empirical foundation, but which are mostly built from unsubstantiated theories. Of course, the danger is that the initial scientific foundation can make a chain of theories sound like established fact, when in reality, they are all guesses. Clever guesses, but guesses all the same. Do we follow? So, how did we get here? And why do I think that science is great, but scientism is bad? If only there was a proper way to measure archaeology, to understand why and when events occurred in the past. Surely, with enough digging, recording, and dating, we can begin to piece together what actually happened. What if science could solve all our problems? Well, congratulations, you have just stumbled upon processualism, once called New Archaeology. It popped up in America in the mid-1960s, with people like Lewis Binford, Robert McCormack Adams, and Kent Flannery leading the charge. At the time, archaeology was mostly about digging up history, but these processual fellas wanted it to be more like a science. Instead of just describing artifacts and sites from history, they wanted to explain why people did what they did, usually by looking at how they adapted to their natural and social environment. They believed that if you gather enough data and tested enough ideas, you could spot patterns, or even rules about how societies change. In short, processualism treated archaeology as an objective, measurable science, focused on causes rather than historic stories. This is the basis for almost all modern archaeology, especially in the USA. Obviously, processual methods are perfectly logical. They're logical at dating, logical at generating theory, and perfectly logical for recording and safeguarding archaeological sites. They're pretty perfect. We can learn so much from picking through places piece by piece, and using logic, we can untangle data to make sense of a place. Well, no, not necessarily. The problem isn't that archaeologists are being illogical, it's that logic is a blunt instrument for a delicate job. This is what philosophers would call underdetermination. Essentially, you can have one piece of evidence, say a broken pot, and three different but perfectly logical explanations for why it's there. All theories are true, yet none are true at the same time. When we pretend that science can solve that human messiness, we end up with simplistic cliches. Please put your hand up if you've heard of any of the following. The prehistoric world was deeply interconnected. This culture was ritual at their core. What the evidence shows us is that these people weren't just scraping by out there, but thriving and adapting in their landscape. All these types of broad cliches are just gobbledygook in my opinion, and weirdly, they most often stem directly from processual archaeology, where some piece of evidence has tipped the scales over to an argument being true. A binary yes or no argument known as positivism, where a bit of evidence can make for an unarguable truth. Let me just say now, before I sound like a loony, this is not true of all processual archaeologists or arguments, and obviously positivism does work for some things like, water not being wet or Atlantis being real. It's simply an issue that's bound to appear when operating in this scientific world.
You have probably been watching footage of this place, Wharton Castle, and you'll have seen me come through this door. Well, that's been sawed open by someone. When you go up this spiral staircase, which I'm probably not meant to be on, someone has sawed through that bit as well and climbed up in there. Kids, having fun? I don't think I'm meant to be up here, because all this is meant to be closed. This castle has seen better days. I wouldn't be surprised if it fell down in years to come. Rishi Sunak, save Wharton Castle. Can we start a petition?
There are many famous examples of this phenomenon in action, but the most hilarious and controversial are often those that presume what a skeleton was into. So, a man buried with women's stuff, let's assume he's effeminate. A woman buried with men's stuff, let's assume she was a warrior. And that in her culture, women are now proven to have been recruited as female warriors. These things can get infinitely controversial, of course, not helped by the never-ending cycle of articles obsessing over the skin or eye colour of ancient skeletons. Regardless, my point stands. Just because something is supposedly scientifically evidenced and logical does not make it a fact. Especially when we are exploring something as complicated as human beings. And at the end of the day, facts matter. Fundamentally, and I will stress this is not an opinion but a fact, scientific methods may tell us their DNA profiles, their religions, their diets, their age, and their settlement patterns, but it absolutely does not tell us who these people were or what they believed in. This is obviously a massive flaw. Efforts to make archaeology more scientific, especially during the processual movement, often reduced the field down to answering small technical questions without really explaining wider human stories. Later approaches rejected this idea, arguing that archaeology creates narratives about the past, rather than discovering absolute truths, i.e. positivism goes in the bin. In the end, archaeology is best seen as an interpretive discipline, one that uses evidence from the ground to tell informed, reasoned stories about what it means to be human. All of this cannot be science. So many of my deepest, most cherished memories come from fleeting moments, things I would not willingly choose to remember. Very clear visions of childhood holidays to the Canary Islands, being driven through lava fields listening to Enrique Iglesias, or trips with my mum and dad to our stationary caravan on the northern English coast listening to Robbie Williams, feeling as if the love of my parents would be the only thing that would ever matter.
This is the other way around and you just got back off holiday, you would not come straight out like this, would you? You'd be like, nah mate, I'm tired, I've just been travelling all day.
Asking a girl out on a date, only for her to show up with 4 of her friends to watch The Conjuring, which was rubbish by the way. An early misty morning outside Cambridge, filming something nobody would ever watch, with close friends that I would never see again after the end of that university year. I did not choose to remember these incredibly intimate moments, nor would I necessarily choose them, but they make me who I am, not my rubbish, not my artifacts, nor my DNA. After all, would it not make more sense to perfectly remember my numerous graduation ceremonies, my first kiss, my first days at school or university, the many weddings I've been subjected to? How many of these momentous events in our lives do we build up to before quickly forgetting, leaving mental real estate for everyday messy happenstance, out of our control, entirely welled up from emotions we felt at the time? All such memories are unique to all of us. Maybe you grew up listening to the Beatles and Simon and Garfunkel and have memories of skinny dipping in Barbados. Maybe you have strong memories of your first experience paddling your toes in the sea as a toddler. There is a virtually endless well of experiences we may hang on to for seemingly inexplicable reasons. After all, we do not choose what memories we hold on to, and often, the more we try to create memorable experiences, the faster we forget them. It's one of the reasons hedonism is such a stupid thing to pursue. At the end of the day, everyone views the world differently, shaped by happy memories, traumas, triumphs, insecurities and fears. Not to mention, there is also your own brain chemistry, or how many times you were dropped on your head as a child. All of this occurs inside our own heads, and it's not obvious at a glance why people can see the world so differently. I can, for instance, see that somebody is scared of dogs, but what I can't see or ever understand is how it felt as a 5-year-old child to be bitten on the hand by a golden retriever. I'm not religious, and have no idea how people take up that kind of belief. I find bigotry repugnant, but have no idea what leads someone to desire hatred. Essentially, it is so easy to judge one another by how memories externally manifest on the world, without ever understanding the strange happenstances that may lead to their occurrence. Well, congratulations, you and I have just discovered hermeneutics, which is one of the foundational tenets of post-processual archaeology. But, to be honest, I'd need another 7 hours to discuss that rabbit hole. Basically, all of this describes a lovely, utopian world that is post-processualism. In essence, a move beyond the tired old ways of trying to positively prove things about our past. And I like it. A lot. So, that's pretty much all I have to give you today. Nothing too complex, I hope, but something to chew on. I know there are probably pseudo-archaeologist oddballs who love these arguments, and to those people, I can quite confidently say, you are idiots. Take these critiques and run towards something intelligent and interesting, or I don't know, off the end of a pier, like all good postmodernists. I have been Adam Morgan Ibbotson, and I really hope you enjoyed this rant. I will see you all on the next episode, and if you did enjoy this episode, please do like, subscribe, and if you're feeling spicy, why don't you buy a copy of my book, because it really is a masterpiece. Love you all. I'll catch you on the next one.